Okay then, so many of us have watched the British Grand Prix this afternoon, and congratulations to Lewis Hamilton for winning it. A long awaited win that many of us will appreciate. Having seen the Grand Prix, let's see if what we saw corresponds to what Andrew Benson saw. Um, I've been calling out Andrew Benson for a long period of time, and I will demonstrate some of this with going through his report. I hope that I can give an accurate representation of what I saw go on this afternoon at Silverstone. That being that from lights out, what's his name? Old George Russell led off the line, and Lewis settled in behind in second. Initially, Lando was third with Max Verstappen fourth, and then part of the way around that lap, Lando was trying to attack Lewis, tried to go around the outside of a corner, realised actually that he had no place to be there, so backed out. It was a kind of situation, a similar situation to where Max went round the outside of Lewis at Monza at that first chicane. Had no place to be there, but didn't back out. Anyway, on this occasion, Lando backed out, but in doing so, that caused him to slow his pace and made him vulnerable to the attack from Verstappen, and Verstappen was able to pass him relatively easy. So demoting Lando down to fourth. As the race unfolded, gap settled out as they were going into essentially a tyre management phase. Gap between George at the front and Lewis in second was between 1 and 2 seconds. Between Lewis and Max in third was around about the 2 second-ish mark. Not to the point in any way where Max was within DRS range and where it was really a concern that Max was a threat to Lewis. And then Lando and Oscar in the two McLarens then ran in fourth and fifth for a period of time. As that stint evolved, you could see the pace of the McLarens began to increase. So whether that was due to the tyres on that Red Bull deteriorating, causing Max to lose pace, or whether that coincided with the deterioration in conditions and the supposed higher downforce setup of those McLarens gave them better grip in the conditions that enabled them to easily pick off Max. I don't know for sure. I can't remember the exact chronology of that. In my head, it's a case of Lando seemed to pick up the speed. He seemed to kind of build up feel for that McLaren, and the grip seems to improve on him, whereas Max's grip was dropping off due to maybe utilisation of tyres. That's how it felt to me. And Lando was able to overtake Max, and then Oscar do the same. But like I say, that may have coincided with the change in the conditions. The lower grip levels of the track may have then been easier to handle in those McLarens if the McLarens are in higher downforce setups. In terms of when those conditions did change, when it started raining, it was Lewis Hamilton that handled that change better than George Russell. When George was dropping off the pace significantly because he was struggling for grip, Lewis found a way past him. Okay, Lewis was then managing them conditions better. However, the McLarens even better still. So what Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri did on Lewis Hamilton, superb. Got to give it to them. They went past Lewis Hamilton really well and were driving really, really well. However, once it settled down, Hamilton maintained that gap. It wasn't as though then McLarens then went streaking off into the distance. They had the pace and the grip to get past Hamilton, but then Hamilton managed to kind of consolidate that and maintain that distance so that they didn't go streaking off. We then saw the first round of pit stops. As is typical, Red Bull do the right thing. They made the best choice. They pitted Max first, and then it led to the following lap whereby McLaren really let Oscar Piastri down. By keeping Oscar on track and just pitting Lando, by not double stacking, it ruined Oscar Piastri's race, and that was unfortunate because Oscar Piastri did really well. The Mercedes stacked Hamilton and Russell, Rightfully so, Hamilton had the advantage of being first in. He'd earned that advantage by taking the lead of the race, okay, ahead of George before being subsequently overtaken by Lando and Oscar. George would have been slightly delayed because he was second in the double stack queue. The combination of Oscar being let down by not double stacking, had he double stacked, it might have dropped him down a bit, but certainly wouldn't have dropped him off the back in the way that it did. And George double stacking, and Red Bull pitting Max the lap before, giving Max that additional lap at a faster pace on those intermediate tyres, enabled Max to leapfrog both Oscar and George. So after that round of pit stops, Lando's in the lead, Hamilton is in second, Max is in third. George looked like he was going to be capable of challenging Max, but then within a few laps has to retire because of what we're led to believe is engine, probably cooling issues if it's the water system related. And sadly, Oscar's been dropped back off altogether, and never really gets back into contention despite setting fast laps. Never was able to really get enough ground back to challenge again. So we see this stint run on the intermediate tyres, and initially there seemed to be a gap between Lando and Lewis of about 3.5 seconds, and a gap between Lewis and Max Verstappen of about 7 seconds. And the gap between second and third, Lewis and Max, seems to remain constant at around about 7 seconds. And initially, that 3.5 second gap between Lando and Lewis stays like that for about 6 or 8 laps, I'm guessing. But then we start to see Lewis erode that gap, and he brings that gap between first and seconds down to around about 1.8 seconds. Strangely and thankfully, Mercedes are bold. They pit first, they go for the undercut. They bring Lewis in and they put him onto soft compound tyres, which in theory are the fastest tyres, but are prone to burning out earlier. So you've got to manage those tyres. Okay. They pit Hamilton. Verstappen follows Hamilton in. Hamilton goes out, puts in a blistering outlap, which is 1.4 seconds faster than Norris's in lap. That puts the pressure on McLaren and Lando. Combination of that pressure and the conditions in the pit lane means that when Lando comes into his pit stop, he kind of overshoots. That adds time to that pit stop, and that 4.5 second pit stop combined with the time that Hamilton gained on his outlap mean that when Norris rejoins the track, he's lost position. Hamilton has managed to leapfrog Norris through that round of pit stops. Verstappen's in third. Tyre compounds at that stage are Hamilton on soft. Norris in the McLaren, they've seemed to have dropped the ball there by trying to match the Mercedes strategy, putting him on soft, even though the talk is at the time that the McLaren performs better on mediums and the medium's more durable. So you can sustain those fast laps for a longer period of time. You can put lap after lap in on them, whereas you've got to be a bit careful with that soft compound tyre. Red Bull opted for the hard compound tyre, which is not the fastest, but what it enables you to do is lap after lap after lap at pushing pace, right? So you can push hard with it, might not get the ultimate 1 lap pace, but you can push hard for the remaining 14 laps in the race. So then what we see is a masterclass of tyre management by Sir Lewis Hamilton. That gap between himself and Lando Norris is always maintained at around about the 2.5 second to 3 second mark. He doesn't over push it, he doesn't burn his tyres out, he just keeps and maintains that gap whilst keeping the performance in those tyres to sustain that to see him through to the end of the race. As we hear in the cool down room afterwards, Lando Norris burns his tyres out and basically is ruined them tyres within 2 or 3 laps. That then leaves him open to the attack by Verstappen, and Verstappen duly takes his opportunity, closes down that gap to Norris and overtakes Norris. So with 4 laps to go, And there's a gap of around about the 3 seconds between Hamilton and Verstappen at this point, 3 to 4 seconds in and around that region. Once again, Hamilton manages that gap, keeps that gap between 3.5 to 2.8 seconds, never allows Verstappen to get anywhere near DRS range, does enough, and relatively comfortably in the end wins the British Grand Prix. A masterclass in how to manage your tyres and how to manage the conditions and how to ultimately accomplish what is required to be accomplished to win a Grand Prix. Manage your way through all them circumstances and bring the car home in first place. So congratulations, Lewis Hamilton. I think that's a fair assessment of what we saw this afternoon. So initially we saw the race between George and Lewis for the first 15, 20 laps perhaps. We can see the conditions change with the first downpour of rain, where Lewis Hamilton handles those conditions better and is able to overtake George. We then see the McLarens come into their own, and both Lando and Oscar, but both with maybe help by the setup of their car, but also extremely good driving in those wet conditions, overtaking Lewis. We saw actually Max drop down to 5th and looked like he was going to be falling into the clutches of Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. Looks like Max had dropped right off, and was that due to the setup of the Red Bull? Was that he'd burnt his tyres out? I don't know. I don't have the access to them tyres to measure how much rubber was left on them, so it'd be pure speculation from me. So then we see, like I say, we see this initially the fight between Lewis and George and how that planned out, and then Lewis eventually overcoming George when the conditions change, which was always likely to happen, always in the back of the mind. So there's no point in burning your tyres out in the first few laps. Let's see how the race evolved, okay? Which is what you do as a pragmatic racer, which is what Lewis Hamilton did. We then saw what the two McLarens were able to do. At that stage, they looked like they were going to disappear off into the distance. Whether it was the conditions then starting to dry, whether it was Lewis Hamilton getting a feel for his car, managing that and managing to keep pace with them. Who knows exactly what caused that, but Hamilton was able to keep pace with those McLarens once they'd passed him. We then go into the pit stop rounds, whereby McLaren let Piastri down, really ruined his race. Verstappen is brought back into it through Red Bull, pitting him when they did. George is eliminated through mechanical problems. And then when we get to the second round of pit stops, for once, Mercedes do the right thing. They give Lewis Hamilton a chance. They give him the chance of putting the pressure on McLaren, and then Hamilton does the rest. He's got a car that's underneath him that's capable of putting in the decent laps, and he, as a driver, manages his tyres to comfortably win that race. Fair comment? I would say that's pretty fair. So, let's see what Andrew Benson saw. I've called out Andrew Benson many a time because the man is corrupt. The man is 100% corrupt. And let's hear what the chief Formula One correspondent... He's dropped the title chief. I wonder why that is. Anyway, this is the best that the BBC can inform you about that race. So, you've all seen it. If you hadn't seen it and were relying on Andrew Benson's description of that race, let's see if this correlates to what we all saw this afternoon. So, Andrew Benson. Lewis Hamilton won a race-long fight with Max Verstappen and Lando Norris at a gripping, wet, dry British Grand Prix to take his first victory since December 2021. Is that a reflection of what we saw? Was it a race-long fight with Max Verstappen? I didn't really see that race-long fight with Max Verstappen. Max Verstappen wasn't really in the picture. You know, it wasn't really a fight in those first laps where the two Mercedes were comfortable, because that Max Verstappen car, that Red Bull, didn't get within DRS range of challenging distance, did he? That wasn't really a fight at that stage. It was actually the McLarens that overtook Max, relegating Max down to 5th. And then the fight was between the McLarens, which took the lead, and Hamilton. And then it was the fight between Hamilton and Norris. That was really the story of the race. But Andrew wants to display the story of the race as being a race-long fight with Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. Why is Max getting the headline role? Why is he grouped in with that? Hamilton had just enough to hold off a late charge from Verstappen's Red Bull to take his 104th career win and his 9th at home to become the record holder for victories at a single circuit. So, late charge from Verstappen, he had just enough, did he? He wasn't managing that comfortably. You're describing that as, oh, he had just enough. Oh, you're making out that, oh, for some reason he clung on to victory. That wasn't a master of his craft doing what he needed to do in those conditions. Just enough. On that final lap, he went into that with a lead of about 2.8 seconds. When he crossed the line, yes, the time might have been down to 1.4 seconds, but when you come round that last bend and you dive across to the pit wall in celebration as you take the checkered flag, it's not as though you're going flat out across the line and the car in second closes that time gap, but it doesn't matter because he's not going to overtake you and win the race. So that's really an artificial kind of indication of somehow a closed gap. It was comfortable. Hamilton never really looked threatened. Verstappen never really looked like getting within DRS range. Why was that? Oh, well, because for those laps that were remaining, Hamilton managed to maintain the performance in his tyres to complete those laps. That's the mark of a master of his craft. But Hamilton had just enough to hold off. Thanks for that, Andrew, the chief. You know, this is the man that's capable of educating you all about the intricacies of this highly technical, complex sport of Formula One. Thanks for that, Andrew. Verstappen, who had... why are we talking about Verstappen now? Verstappen, who had struggled for pace through much of the race, that was hit by 2 separate periods of rain, came alive in the closing laps to take second place from Norris, who grabbed the final position on the podium. Norris grabbed that position, did he? Or Norris was unlucky not to win? Norris drove excellently well. When it started raining, whether it was due to the setup of the car or whether it's due to Norris's ability to handle that car, he took the lead. He did it superbly well. He looked to be on course to have a chance of winning that race. It was the fact that he was disadvantaged by, number one, the Mercedes pit call bringing in Hamilton the lap before Norris, the brilliance of Hamilton putting the pressure on with his outlap, and that pressure causing both McLaren to panic and match up the strategy by putting Norris onto the same tyres as Hamilton rather than be bold and say, no, we know we're faster on the mediums, and then the mediums can sustain that faster race pace for longer for the duration, and hopefully you can force Hamilton's soft compound tyres to drop off by pressurising for a long period of time, and then your medium tyres will give you that higher pace for longer, and meaning that those last few laps you'll get the benefit. All of these things impacted Norris negatively. Let's be clear about that. But Hamilton did what he needed to do, didn't he? They're both factors. So really, Norris was disadvantaged, and in doing so, that made him susceptible and made him drop off to Verstappen. But instead, rather than saying that, Benson tells us that Verstappen, who had struggled for pace throughout, right, he came alive. Verstappen came alive. It wasn't Norris dropping off. It was Verstappen coming alive, right? And he took second, and Norris grabbed the final podium position. It wasn't Norris dropping off due to tyre strategy from the McLaren. No, it was Verstappen coming alive. That's the way that Andrew Benson wants to tell you it is. Hamilton appeared to be in tears in the car as he told his team, "This means so much to me," as they congratulated him on the radio. "This one means a lot to us all," his engineer Pete Bonington said. "I love you, Bono," Hamilton replies. Thanks for these quotes, Andrew. That's really informative. Okay. Why does it mean a lot to us all, Andrew? Well, because the last race he won was Abu Dhabi 2021, the one that the sport defrauded him out and claimed that he came second in that race. He actually won that one and his 8th World Championship, but he was defrauded out of an 8th World Championship. You know the reasons why, and that you've never explained them to the public. You've kept them concealed, Andrew Benson, because you're a fraud and you're complicit with the fraud that was enacted on the population. I'm going to expose you for that, Andrew, and that will come at the end of this video and in the future. Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff described the win as a fairy tale for them and Hamilton. Norris's teammate Oscar Piastri, who was also in the lead fight for the first half of the race, took 4th place ahead of Ferrari's Carlos Sainz. Classic race for Hamilton's comeback win. Okay, so in front of a crowd of 164,000 people cheering the British drivers, and especially Hamilton, to the rafters, despite the inclement weather, the top drivers and leading 3 teams put on a superb show throughout. Mercedes drivers George Russell and Lewis Hamilton led the early laps after locking out the front row of the grid for the team, whilst Verstappen passed Norris around the outside of turn 4 on the opening lap to run 3rd. Okay, was that due to Verstappen's brilliance, or was it due to Norris trying to attack Hamilton, losing pace in the process and leaving himself vulnerable to the clutches of Verstappen? Tell us, Andrew. No, you don't. Okay. But the Red Bull did not initially show us its usually formidable race pace. So this is the other way. This is what we do all the time, isn't it? What we do all the time. The Red Bull didn't initially show us its usual formidable pace. The Red Bull's slow, right? But in the latter stages of the race, in the latter stages of the race, even though the Red Bull was originally slow, in the latter stages of the race, Verstappen came alive. Red Bull slow, but Verstappen comes alive. It's the car, it's the driver. It's the car, it's the driver. It's always the driver that makes the difference, isn't it, Andrew? It's always Verstappen. Yeah, Verstappen, Verstappen, Verstappen. You like Verstappen, don't you, Andrew? You like Verstappen. You're employed for the British Broadcasting Company. You are reporting for a British media company on the British Grand Prix that a British driver, a record-breaking 8-time world champion who has won a record-breaking 105 Grand Prix, minimum of 105 Grand Prix, because we're not counting the ones where in the 2022 and 2023 seasons where he may have finished second to an illegal car that should have been disqualified. We're not counting them as victories yet, okay? But a minimum of an 8-time world champion, now a record-breaking 105th time Grand Prix winner and 9-time winner of Silverstone. You're writing a report on that, and you're focusing on Maxwell Verstappen. Who pays your wages, Andrew Benson? Is it the Dutch? Is it the Dutch or some other corrupt entity, or is it the British licence fee payer? Just asking, Andrew. Just asking. Honey, what do you do for money? I wonder. Anyway, the Red Bull did not initially show its usually formidable race pace, and Norris was able to reclaim 3rd place on lap 15 with a pass into Stowe Corner. Why was that then? Right? Why was that? Was that because Norris had managed his tyres, tracked down Verstappen, closed, whilst Verstappen was burning up the grip on his tyres, and then Norris blitzed past him? And then Oscar managed to do exactly the same? I thought it was all about the driver. I thought it was Max Verstappen. How on earth can other drivers be passing Max Verstappen when you're up against this driver who's the best you've ever seen? You know, I thought nobody was able to overtake Max Verstappen. Oh no, it must be that the Red Bull's slow. Yeah, it's the Red Bull that's slow. Okay, thanks for that, Andrew. Hamilton made the... Sorry, so we talk about the downforce setup here. Piastri followed the Briton through 2 laps later, just as the first shower of rain started. bringing the McLarens, who had chosen a higher downforce setup than Mercedes and Red Bull, into their own. So you're saying, oh, the reason that Piastri passed him was because the conditions are changing. Well, how come Piastri had been gaining on him for all that period of time? Strange, isn't it? You know, it kind of, the gaps had grown, but then they'd stopped growing, and then the McLaren started to reel that Red Bull in. It wasn't that it was raining throughout that period, was it? It was that maybe the tyre wear was starting to take effect, and one tyre wear was dropping off, while the others, it wasn't dropping off, and they were able to then come back and reel that gap back in. Maybe that was what was going on, Andrew. Who knows? You don't certainly tell us. Anyway, Hamilton made the first move, though, passing Russell into Stowe on lap 18. Hamilton can manage the conditions better than George Russell. Yeah? A few corners later, both Mercedes drivers slid off the track at turn 2 at the start of lap 19 as they wrestled for grip on a slippery track, and Norris pounced, passing Russell at turn 4 before closing on Hamilton and passing him at turn 1 on lap 20. Norris did excellently well, as did Piastri. Well done to them. Piastri moved up into second behind him, and the McLarens ran 1-2 for 5 laps as the track began to dry. And as I say, Hamilton didn't allow those two cars to run off into the distance during that period of time when they were clearly fast enough to overtake him. They didn't then run off into the distance, did they? Hamilton made sure he consolidated and kept them within striking distance. Decisive pit stop tyre choices. The lead cars all stayed out on slick tyres, though, through the first period of rain. But the teams knew more rain was coming, and as it came down more heavily, Verstappen benefited from an early stop for intermediates on lap 26. Norris, Hamilton and Russell followed him in a lap later, Piastri suffering badly for staying out a further lap on slicks and losing 10 seconds to the lead pack. So that poor decision from McLaren ruined Piastri's race. Unlucky, because you had a great race, Oscar. Well done. I feel for you because you deserve better than that. Okay. The stop timing vaulted Verstappen up to third behind Norris and Hamilton with Russell fourth. So the Mercedes double stacking would have cost Russell time. That combined with Piastri being kept out on track for a lap enabled Verstappen to go from fifth to third. Okay. But 4 laps later, Russell was out of the running when he was told to retire his Mercedes because of water system problems. Russell looked like he was going to be on course to be able to challenge Verstappen, but then had to retire. By lap 38, with 14 to go, the track was almost dry, and Verstappen again jumped early for a tyre change. So Andrew Benson, let's read this through again. By lap 38, with 14 to go, the track was almost dry, and Verstappen again jumped early for a tyre change. Who was Verstappen following into the pits, Andrew? Could that have been Sir Lewis Hamilton? Was Verstappen around about 7 seconds behind Sir Lewis Hamilton? You know the saying about Hamilton had closed this gap of 3.5 seconds down to about 1.8 seconds behind Norris, the leader, right? And this gap between Hamilton in second and Verstappen in third was roughly about 7 seconds, and that seemed to maintain at that. And Hamilton pitted for softs the lap before McLaren brought Norris in. But when Hamilton went into the pits for softs, Verstappen followed him and pitted onto hards. Andrew likes to report that as, with 14 to go, Verstappen again jumped early for a tyre change. Why is this about Verstappen, Andrew? Why is this all about Max Verstappen? It's all about Max, isn't it, Andrew? Why is that? Let's come down a little bit. He and Hamilton stopped together. Why are we leading with the Verstappen? Mercedes choosing soft tyres and Verstappen... Mercedes chose softs, Verstappen chose the hards. Not Red Bull choosing the hard, right? Mercedes chose one compound, Verstappen chose the other. It's Verstappen's choice, not Red Bull's choice, yeah? See, early in the race, the Red Bull's not got its usual pace. Late in the race, Verstappen comes alive. Mercedes choose the soft compound tyre for Hamilton. Verstappen chooses the hard compound tyre. See what we're doing here? Can we see what we're doing here? I can. I see it as clear as anything, you corrupt individual. Anyway, whilst Norris stayed out a lap later before taking softs. So, the earlier stop vaulted Hamilton ahead of Norris into the lead. Can you explain the dynamics of that, Andrew Benson? Can you explain that outlap of Lewis Hamilton, which we're told was 1.4 seconds faster than Norris's in lap, well, that closed that time down. That was around about 1.8 seconds when Hamilton pitted. That puts the pressure on McLaren. That combined with wet pit lane, Norris going in there and slightly overshooting his pit box, resulting in a 4.5 second stop for Norris, means that Norris emerged back on track behind Hamilton. Yeah, you put that pressure on your opponent, you force them into that mistake, that gives you the advantage. That's how you play this game. Yeah? Oh, but it was just the fact that Hamilton pitted a bit earlier allowed him to jump him. Thank you for your valuable insight and for that explanation, Andrew Benson. The earlier stop vaulted Hamilton ahead of Norris. It's just a vault, yeah? He just ran up, hit the vault box and catapulted himself ahead. Incredible. Thank you for your technical insight, Chief Andrew Benson. You're getting paid how much by the BBC to write this, Andrew? To share us your valuable insight? Thank you for your valuable insight, Andrew Benson. Or are you just the sort of puppet that will parrot a narrative, a corrupt narrative for money to feed the masses the lies that they want us all to believe? I'll come to this, Andrew. Don't you worry. I will come to it. I will come to it. So, it set up a grandstand finish. This sport loves the grandstand finish, doesn't it? With the three cars in a single camera shot on the Hangar Straight for the entire climactic period of the race. Yeah, you love the grandstand finish. You love because that excites the kiddies, doesn't it? You like arousing the kiddies, and you love the climax. You know, those at the BBC have got a history of liking to arouse the kiddies to climax. You know, and you're clearly of that ilk, Andrew Benson. So, Hamilton always looked to have Norris under control, but it was soon clear that Verstappen was now the major threat. The Red Bull transformed by the decision to switch to hard tyres. But that was Verstappen's decision, was it? Rightio. Anyway, now, Hamilton always looked to have Norris under control. Why would that be, Andrew? Surely, right, if you look at the actual dynamics of what we saw from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the McLaren, in them sort of conditions, looked to be the faster car. Yes, Mercedes locked out the first two positions on the grid, but that was done in conditions where it suited the Mercedes better. In drying conditions, in a drier track, on racing tyres such as mediums or softs, or probably even hards, that McLaren looked to be a quicker car, as did the Red Bull. So why would you say Hamilton always looked to have Norris under control? Hamilton has gone on to soft tyres and has got to do 14 laps on them. Norris has gone on to soft tyres, has got to do 13 laps on them. One less lap. One less lap of wear. Surely that means advantage to McLaren, advantage to Norris. But Hamilton always looked to have him under control. Well, how can that be? Oh, would that be the genius of an 8-time world champion, a man with exemplary car control, exemplary tyre management so that he doesn't burn them out and make sure he can sustain enough pace, okay, without going mental, without going too mad and burning those tyres out, but just maintaining enough of a gap to not allow the other car to get within DRS range and do enough as to what he needs to do to accomplish what is necessary to win that race. a master of his craft. Are you going to tell us that, Andrew Benson? No, I didn't think so. So Hamilton looked to have Norris under control, but it was soon clear that Verstappen was now the major threat. This is all about Supermax, isn't it? It's all about Supermax. The Red Bull transformed by the decision to switch to hard tyres. Verstappen swept by Norris on lap 48 down the Hanger Straight and went into the final 4 laps 3.2 seconds behind Hamilton and closing in. What was the gap at the start of the last lap, Andrew? About 2.5, 2.8 seconds, something like that. Oh, he's closed in really well there. Hamilton must be bricking himself. Or was he just managing it quite comfortable? Maintain it about 2.8 to 3 seconds. Not a problem really, isn't it? Manage. Make sure there's enough in them tyres that does Max put in a fast lap? Oh, let's respond. Keep enough in the tyres to be able to respond if necessary. Manage your tyres through to race distance. Do what's necessary. But Hamilton had enough to hold him off, crossing the line 1.4 seconds adrift. As I've said, Hamilton comes round the last few bends. Is he flat out pushing to try and perform a fast lap time, or is he just making sure he gets there and wins the race and veers himself over to the pit wall in celebration and to take that checkered flag? Whereas Max is not and is just continuing through like normal. And therefore that time gap just reduces, but it's insignificant because it makes no difference because it's the end of the race. So, before Hamilton fought back tears after climbing out of the car. Meanwhile, Norris and Piastri were left to rue some dubious McLaren pit calls. Both Norris's stops were a lap too late, while Piastri was undone by the decision not to double stack him behind Norris when they changed to inters. And Piastri's pace on the medium tyres at the end of the race, he was the fastest car on the track by quite some margin, suggested that Norris too should have gone on them when he made his final stop. And what would that have done? Had he have gone on to that medium tyre, would that have meant that he would have probably evaded the clutches of Max Verstappen? Would it have meant that he'd have been able to probably challenge Lewis Hamilton? Possibly. Would Lewis have been able to hold Lando off had Lando been on medium tyres? We will never know. Have you managed to tell any of that, Andrew? No, but you've told us about Supermax and Max coming alive, haven't you, Andrew? You've told us about Supermax and the Red Bull not being very quick in those early laps, but Supermax at the end. Oh, Hamilton was just about able to hold him off. Behind Sainz, Hulkenberg impressed in a Haas, heavily upgraded for this race in 6th place, while Aston Martin's Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso took 7th and 8th as Williams' Alex Albon and RB's Yuki Tsunoda completed the points positions in the top 10. And then we've got some lovely pictures. So this is the BBC's chief Formula One writer. This is the man that is paid handsomely by the BBC to report on the sport of Formula One. He gets to travel around the world to all of these venues to watch the Grand Prix, to be put up in a nice hotel, okay, watch the race, report on the race, write his articles and parrot the corrupt narrative. He parrots the corrupt narrative because he knows that this sport is corrupt. He knows that Abu Dhabi 2021 was corrupt. The sport fixed the outcome of a world championship, and Andrew Benson has never revealed that to the public. You have never heard from this man the corruption that took place in Abu Dhabi 2021, and he knows about it because I've informed him about it. I've informed the BBC about it, and they stay quiet. That means you are complicit with a crime. You are complicit with a fraud. You are corrupt. You're a criminal, Andrew Benson. Let's talk you through Andrew Benson. This will be sent to you, Andrew Benson, so you're aware. Let's see if you report this, Andrew Benson. Abu Dhabi 2021. Nicholas Latifi crashes a car, causing a safety car with 5 laps to go. At the start of that lap, Nicholas Latifi's race engineer says it has to be this lap. What's he talking about there, Andrew? Tell us. Write us an article about that. Do all of the research. Explain what might be dubious about all the different circumstances taking a place in and around that. So, immediately, Martin Brundle, the commentary team of Brundle and Crofty from Sky Sports, start lying about what is possible. They tell us that there's bound to be a couple of racing laps remaining in this event, despite the fact that in similar situations, on average, 5.5 laps of racing are lost before racing can resume. There were less than 5.5 laps remaining, indicating that statistically that should have been a safety car finish, yet immediately they're telling everybody there's bound to be a couple of racing laps remaining. Brundle and Crofty then start lying about what is possible. They lie about the regulations of the sport, suggesting that it's allowable to resume racing with the lapped cars still in situ. That is not in the regulations. There are reasons why that's not in the regulations. That hasn't been allowed in the sport since 2012, when this regulation was reintroduced into the sport. 198 Grand Prix have been contested where lapped cars will have had to have been released in the event of a safety car deployment and lapped cars were in play. 198 Grand Prix had been contested. This was 199th. And they're suggesting that it's allowable to resume racing with lapped cars being left in place. They then suggest the notion, well, if they do release them, how long will they wait before they allow racing to resume again? And yet every time these lapped cars are released, that safety car remains on track for at least one further lap, sometimes 2 laps, to enable those released cars to fully catch the back of the pack, to restore sporting fairness to all competitors. You've never explained this to people. You, the chief writer for the BBC for the sport of Formula One, when a British Formula One driver was robbed of his valid accomplishment, his record-breaking 8th World Championship, when he was robbed of that by the sport fraudulently denying him of that, you have never exposed this to the British public. Why is that, Andrew Benson? It's because you're parroting the corrupt narrative because you're corrupt. You are corrupt. So, you've never said that F1 TV, the creators of the visuals and the audio that gets played to us, the conditioning that we're all fed with, well, that plays to us messages which aren't in compliance with the regulations of the sport. Why would they be doing such a thing, Andrew Benson? This isn't all adding up, isn't it? There's too many things which aren't right here. Then we see the race director. Well, actually, before this, one extra thing, Andrew. All of the messages exchanged between the teams and the drivers are with the teams suggesting that, oh, we think the race director might restart the race like this. Not in compliance with the regulations of the sport. The teams are saying over the radio to their drivers that they think that the race director is about to break the rules of the sport, and then the race director breaks the rules of the sport. That's a bit strange, isn't it, Andrew? Have you ever explored that notion, Andrew? No, you haven't. That's rather strange. A journalist unable to identify the anomalies, the things that are clearly wrong, where the alarm bell should be ringing. Oh, you're not going to expose that, are you, Andrew? You're not going to. Who pays your wages, Andrew? Who pays your wages? I wonder. I have served, I will be of service. Is that how it works, Andrew? Is that how it works? Who knows? Who knows? So, Michael Massey then makes his error under pressure. And all of the global commentary teams, rather than say, well, he's not allowed to do this, He's not allowed to do this. Firstly, he's only released 5 of the 8 lapped cars. You're not allowed to do that, because in doing so, what he has done, he has blocked off the car in 3rd position from being able to challenge the car in 2nd position, because he's left 2 lapped cars in situ. Had that have taken place at Silverstone this year, had there been a safety car situation and there were 2 lapped cars in between 2nd place and 3rd place, and they just restart the race, Lewis Hamilton, no, so let's say Lando Norris bolts. No, in fact, no, let's say it's after this 2nd round of pit stop, so Lewis Hamilton's in the lead. Lewis Hamilton bolts. Lando Norris shoots off after him. Max Verstappen in 3rd. He can't then start accelerating because he can't overtake yet until he's crossed the start-finish line to start that lap that they're allowed to resume racing on. But he's got 2 lapped cars in front of him that he's got to wait behind before he can then hit the accelerator. And by the time he gets past them, he's left 3 or 4 seconds behind. He can no longer challenge those lead 2 cars. You've separated out 2 cars in a multi-competitor event to let them race off for the win. Well, that's illegal. Have you ever told us that, Andrew Benson? No, you've not. Why not, Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief, to expose the corruption, to expose the fraud? Andrew Benson, tell us about the Lando Norris-Pierre Gasly situation, whereby, at the point in time, Nicholas Latifi crashed. Lando Norris was in 8th, Pierre Gasly was in 7th. Lando Norris was less than 12 seconds behind Pierre Gasly. Max Verstappen was actually further behind Hamilton than Norris was behind Gasly. Max Verstappen was 12 seconds behind Hamilton. Lando was slightly less than that behind Gasly. Hamilton had come by and passed Norris, but he'd not made it to Gasly at that point. Latifi crashes, the safety car comes out, it picks up Hamilton. Norris has to wait behind Hamilton. Gasly disappears off around the track and joins the back of the safety car snake. So now, from being less than 12 seconds behind Gasly, Norris is now almost an entire lap behind Gasly. You cannot allow a safety incident to impact somebody's race in that manner. It allows Max Verstappen to close up to the back of Hamilton, negating that 12-second advantage that Hamilton had. But what's happened to Gasly's 12-second advantage over Norris? Has that been taken out? Oh no! That's now increased to an entire lap. That skewed the outcomes for the competitors differently. That's not in compliance with the underlying principle of the sport of Formula 1, the FIA International Sporting Code. You can't do that. Hence, you have regulations. Hence, those regulations have to be carried out before you resume racing. When you carry them out, the time it takes to carry them out means that the number of laps that elapse result in that race having to be a safety car finish. There can be no changes of position, providing cars don't retire from that race. Lewis Hamilton wins the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton is the 2021 season champion. He is the 8-time world champion. You've never told us that, have you, Andrew? You've never explained the rules. You've never explained the regulations. You've never explained the purpose of the regulations. Why is that, Andrew Benson, the BBC's chief Formula 1 writer? Why is that, Andrew Benson? I will tell you, it is because you are corrupt. You are part of the corrupt media who condition the mind to accept the corrupt agenda. The government has just changed, Andrew. The media is going to be held to account. You are going down, as are those that support you within the BBC. You are going down. Trust me, I'm going to ensure that you go down. I'm going to ensure it. Anyway, we then see the human error of Michael Massey. None of the media pointed out all of the things that are wrong with it. Instead, and it's ending, Wow! How exciting it's going to be, everybody! We're going to get a grandstand finish. We're going to get a climax. That was really exciting. Anyway, we then have the after-race Mercedes appeal, where Mercedes appeal to the sports governing body to tell them, you have broken the rules of the sport. In doing so, you have changed the outcome of that event, and therefore you must reinstate to the previous lap to where the rules were broken, because at that point in time, that needs to be the declared rule. You cannot allow something to stand beyond that point in time where the rules are broken, and that then changed what would have been the certain outcome. Instead of those stewards looking at the rules, looking at what actually took place and comparing the two as to what is right and what is wrong, the FIA decide to ask Red Bull what Red Bull think. They invite Red Bull into that appeal. They invite in Christian Horner, Jonathan Wheatley, Adrian Newey, and ask Red Bull to present their interpretation of the rules that Red Bull had happily competed under since the start of the 2012 season, happily accepting, happily contesting 198 Grand Prix under those regulations. But at the 199th one, Red Bull propose a new interpretation of those rules and suggest that legally, any doesn't mean all. And this line here suggests that the race director can do whatever he wants. Legally, we're allowed to ignore context, that being that this is a sport. And therefore, if you just focus on whether you can interpret the meaning of this word to mean one thing or another and ignore the outcomes that are produced, you can legally argue for this to be okay, which is the biggest pile of turd you've ever heard. Because all you need to do to kick that argument out of court is to say, well, law is grounded in context. What are the implications of your proposed, supposed, alternative representation of those rules? The alternative interpretation. Oh, well, that causes skewed outcomes by not releasing, by saying any doesn't mean all, meaning that justifies 5 cars being let through, not all 8. Well, you've blocked off third place from challenging for a top 2 position. You've impacted that car's race. Well, that kicks that argument out of court, doesn't it? Yes. Context, sporting fairness in sport. So that doesn't comply with that. And the race director doing such a thing, not keeping that safety car on track for a further lap. Well, what has that done to the chances of Lando Norris, who was in 7th position at that stage? Because, you've never really exposed Sergio Perez's mysterious retirement from that race, have you, Andrew? Checo, we need to retire the car. We need to retire the car. Box. Really? Yeah, we there's nothing wrong with the car. Why are you retiring me? We're in 3rd place. I'm going to get a podium here. What's going on here? Really? Yeah, box. What's going on there then? So that boosted Gasly from 7th to 6th and Lando from 6th to 7th. But then Lando could go no further because he's left 2/3 of a lap behind Gasly now, when previously he was less than 12 seconds. So the race director's overriding authority doesn't give him overriding authority to pick and choose who gets to race in that race, does it? So that kicks that argument out of court, quite simply. But Mercedes took a barrister into that appeal, didn't they? Oh, that's called gaslighting. Who's really in on all of this fix, Andrew? How corrupt is this sport? How deep does it go, Andrew? You've never told us, have you, Andrew? Just like every other form of media. You've just told us, it was a bit controversial, it's a bit confusing. Nobody knows the rules. Nobody knows the purpose of those rules. But don't you worry your little heads. Max fully deserved it because he led the most amount of laps. And he got let off with not being penalised all season for trying to run Lewis Hamilton off the track all the time. Oh, no, he didn't say that, sorry. That's just me that says that. But It'll come out, Andrew. All will be revealed, and you're going down. You're going down. Thank you for this report, Andrew. It was, the British great of the sport, record breaker in the sport of Formula One, winning his home Grand Prix for a record breaking ninth time. And your report is all about Max, isn't it? It's all about Max. It's all about Max, Andrew. Thanks for that, Andrew. Thanks for that. Enjoy your tenure, what remains of it, because you are going to go down. Okay? You're going to go down. Thank you for your time. And we'll be back. Well, I say we'll be back. I'll be back with some more as and when I get the chance.